Hello, I'm Lee from the blog Little by Little Home, and today I'm going to share with you how we created a vegetable garden right here in the suburbs. Last spring, I told my family all I wanted for Mother's Day was a vegetable garden. 2 houses back, we had a huge vegetable garden in the suburbs, and we had a lot more property then. Here we have less property, so they kind of thought I was a little bit crazy, and I was looking around trying to figure out. So the setup of our property is we have a front yard, then we have our house, then we have this space right here between our house and our garage, and then we have a backyard. The backyard would maybe be ideal, be kind of out of the way. It's a much bigger space, but there's a lot of huge trees back there, and there's just way too much shade in the summer. This is the only space besides using the front yard, which still gets a lot of shade anyway. We have big trees out there that gets the most amount of sun. It's about 900 square feet, which is smaller than the garden I had before, but still, any bit of land that you have that you can create a garden is perfect. Whether it is container garden, you have maybe 100 square feet, or you have an acre. I'll tell you about how we set this up, what we used for fencing, and some different information, but let's start with what do I actually have growing back here behind me. Last year was our first season with this garden, and I decided to spread some ryegrass back here. A book that my dad gave me many years ago has been my go-to for information. I'll put this in the description below if you want to check that out. And he talked about in it about planting ryegrass and buckwheat also, but to use it as a ground cover. So the point of this, so this is a ryegrass. Funny story, when I told my dad that I planted ryegrass, he said, "Did you plant annual or perennial?" Moment, I was like scared that I had planted perennial and I was going to deal with the same thing, because the reason for planting is it will get taller. It will provide a lot of shade to the ground, which will snuff out any grass, any weeds, anything that is trying to grow in the space, in the soil that was there previously and that we didn't quite pull out, during the growing season last year. I did plant annual. So what we're gonna do is, here soon, we'll get the rototiller and just rototill this underneath. It'll add some organic material to the ground, so it'll serve a dual purpose and kind of aerate underneath, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this all turns out. Okay, so now that we have settled what is growing back here, I don't have a field, I don't have cows that I'm gonna be feeding or anything. We do live in the suburbs, a wonderful neighborhood, we really enjoy it, but I did miss growing a garden. So we settled on this space. So my first suggestion when deciding where to put a garden would be to figure out where it's going to get optimal amount of sunshine. Okay, so we decided we're gonna put a garden in. First thing we needed to do was to figure out fencing. Even though we do live in the suburbs, we have a lot of deer and they will mow everything down. You might actually even notice back here I have some tulips. We have to plant our tulips inside our garden area, which is all fenced off, and I have gates, and I'll show you that in a little bit, because the deer love tulips. There are no tulips that grow anywhere in our neighborhood because they come and just eat them all. So the deer can really be an issue, and it needs to be a high enough fence. And yes, deer can jump pretty high, but they don't necessarily have the incentive enough to maybe jump in here yet, I hope. So a fence that's only like 2 feet tall is that's not even gonna help at all. They're just gonna jump over that, enjoy a snack all night long while I sleep, and I'd get up in the morning and find everything gone. So the fence had to be high enough. We were really doing this on a budget, like a really small budget, because it wasn't something that we had planned for. In the meantime, we had gone through our basement from moving in here 2 years ago. We hadn't quite gone through all the windows. So the windows on the downstairs of our home, the first floor, have storm windows that have to be removed. So they look like this. This doesn't have a storm window. This is our garage. They have to physically be removed, the storm windows, and then a screen put on them. The second floor and above have screens and storms that go up and down, but those have not been converted down below. So what we did last spring, James went through and figured out that we had a ton of screens and storm windows, that all the screens and storms that did not fit into the windows on the first floor, we assume came from the second floor. They were ones that were removed, and then put in the storms and the screens that go up and down. I'm sure there's a technical name for that, but I don't know what it is. So we ended up putting them out on the side of the road, figuring the garbage, or maybe somebody would take it. And I was sitting there looking out the window one morning, and I was like, a light bulb went off, and I was like, wait a minute, I have $0 for a fence. What if we use the storm windows and the screens for the fence? My kids had hauled all of that out to the road. I said to them, I'm really sorry, but can you bring that all back up and just put it in the backyard? They didn't know what I was thinking about at all. So later that day, when they had brought that all up, I had them stand and line up and hold it up next to each other, because I wanted to see how it was going to work. And I looked and I was like, it's kind of weird. It is definitely kind of weird. And they were painted green, which I think the house was originally painted a green color. But I was like, maybe it'll work. And I was like, who cares? It's free. It's our garden. It's going to keep the deer out. They're not going to eat our stuff. let's go ahead and try it. So I proposed the idea to James and he was like, well, it's in the budget, so let's go ahead and do it. We did have to make a couple of purchases for the fencing. In the middle here are probably 1x4s or so to hold it all together. We did get some metal stakes. So I'm not quite sure exactly what it was, but it wasn't anything more than maybe $50 in supplies. I used paint that I already had on hand and got it all painted. We put gates on either side because where I'm sitting right now, there is a sidewalk that goes around. So put gates on either side because we're kind of like landlocked here with our property a little bit on either side and then neighbors on either side as well. So we needed gates on both sides so we could get out and get to different parts of our property. I share what we used as fencing to encourage you to maybe kind of think outside the box, see what you can find, decide what are the different animals that you're trying to keep out of here, how high does it need to be, maybe you don't have deer and don't have to worry about that. Get creative, take a look, see what you have, ask around. I had spent a lot of time looking on Marketplace for a few weeks before we put this up and just couldn't come up with anything. I was open to something used. Really the only things I found were like decrepit and falling apart, and it was just people who had taken it down, replacing it with a newer fence. So that wasn't going to work, and brand new was going to be way out of the budget. So I encourage you to kind of think outside the box, use things. And again, this looked really ugly in the beginning, but then when I went and painted it, it didn't look so bad. And I did apologize to my neighbors when we first put it up. I was like, I'm really sorry that you're gonna regret we moved in here. Once the area was rototilled, and I should mention that we've had this rototiller for about 10 years. We had it in our home where we had a huge garden. It is a front tine rototiller. There's two different types of main rototillers, front tine and rear tine. The goal would be to have a rear tine, but I don't have a big enough garden that really suffices for needing that. But if you have a large garden and you have the budget for it, a rear tine, the price range is higher, but it works so much better. They typically come a bit bigger and they're much more effective. A front tine is perfect for a suburban garden. It works really well just in this space. It's a little bit harder to handle. It doesn't do as good of a job, but again, we're just trying to create a vegetable garden just to kind of sustain us through the summer and maybe the fall. And this year I'm going to learn how to can too. So I'm excited about that. Okay, so we have the ground all rototilled. We've pulled out all of the grass clumps that were there, a lot of the rocks, and we have a power line. I don't know if you can see that right there. There is power that runs from the house to the garage. And so that's kind of the annoying thing. The fence sits right outside it. I didn't want to bring it inside of that because then we would lose space. Kind of goes on an angle, and we have to hand dig that space out. We usually dig it up. James puts cones in that area so that he doesn't rototill over it. So there is a little bit more work, but it's a small enough. It's probably about 10 square feet or so that we kind of have to hand do, which is fine. He can do the rest of it with the rototiller, which really doesn't take that long. The fence is up now. I've got it painted. And we have gates on either side every single night. Those have to be closed up. It's one of the things that I check, and I double check before I go to bed as well. Then it was time to start planting. So what did we plant? Okay, this was a year ago, and I probably should have read my blog post. Oh, there is a blog post all about this if you want to see more pictures, and I will link that in the description below. I remember we did tomatoes, we did kale, I did green beans, a couple different types of green beans, lots of lettuce. We eat a lot of salad, and I think it's so much fun to want to make a salad and come out and pick everything and then just put it right on your plate. So that was a lot of fun. Same with kale, grab some of that, go make a smoothie. Sweet potatoes. Oh, and I grew pinto beans. That was kind of fun. I'll put another blog post where I gave an update on our garden in the description below. I basically just planted pinto beans that I bought at the store in a bag of dried pinto beans, and they grew. So that was pretty neat as well. James made a trellis out of just leftover wire and wood that we happened to have. The pepper soup and carrots and beets. Okay, I think that was about it. We are looking forward to getting our vegetable garden up and going again here. So what I need James to do is to get this rototilled, but he threw out his shoulder. So I might be the one rototilling, so we'll see, because I really want to get things growing. It is early spring here right now, and we live in the Northeast, Zone 5, which means that we can't plant things too early. If you live in the South, you're probably like planting and enjoying the fruits of your harvest already, but we're just a little bit behind that. We do have a shorter growing season, so I'm going to try to optimize it a bit more. I've been doing a lot of research on what we can plant when. We're excited to get that started, and I will put out a video and a blog post coming up soon with our plans for the vegetable garden for this season, but I wanted to share with you how we created this space and encourage you to be creative in what space you use. Again, maybe you don't even have, this is I think about 900 square feet. Maybe you don't have this much space. That's fine. You have maybe 10 square feet, 100 square feet. You have a couple of containers. Go for it. It is so fun to watch something come to life. I felt like I had when I grow a vegetable garden, I feel like I have like babies that I'm watching. Like, it's just really exciting. And I was able to freeze some of those things. And like I mentioned earlier, this year I am hoping to learn how to can. So we have those items all through the winter. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope that it has kind of gotten you going to realize you can have a vegetable garden no matter where you live, even if you live in the suburbs, even in an apartment. You could have container gardens. You can get some of those boxes that hang over like a balcony, and you can plant some seeds and some plants in there. So really don't let the size of your property hold you back from maybe even if you just grow one tomato plant, those tomatoes will be the best tomatoes you eat the entire year. Again, thanks for watching this video. I would love it if you would subscribe, and I'll put more information, blog posts and stuff in the description below. But have a great day, and we'll see you next time.